Evidence was also laid as to the numerous threats to the life of the eyewitness Cholasiri. Because there was an imminent threat to his life, he fled from the area, did not report the crime and later joined the army. Let me skip some of the details in the story and get to my technical evidence. Now these bones of the partly burnt body of the young girl was discovered from a junction close to Kobegane, and they were brought to us for examination, and the talisman and the other parts of the remnants, skeletal remains, other than the skeletal remains, were dispatched to the government analyst department. Examination of the bones. Among the pieces of bone were two partly burnt, flat bony pieces from the vault of the skull, that is the top of the skull, which were identified as from parts of the parietal bone, incorporating unfused sutures, which I will show you in a moment. The suture lines remained wide open, and there was no sign of commencement of fusion, that is getting together, either from the outside nor from the inside. Now, skeletal remains are regularly brought for identification purposes. While in the developed world, this is the function of the forensic anthropologist, in Sri Lanka, this service is provided by specialists in forensic medicine, both in the health department and the universities. Now, in this case, the only piece of evidence associated with the body were the pieces of bone from the skull. When the whole skeleton is present, the sex of the person can be ascertained with 90 to 95% accuracy. The pelvic bone is the best bone for ascertaining the sex of a person. Now, that is the pelvic bone, and in this also this thing called the greater sciatic notch is the best, because even before puberty you can differentiate a man from a woman by looking at this bone. Most other features predictive of sex are a result of pubertal hormonal activity and not of much use in younger subjects. Features like the surface area of the mastoid process of the skull, which is just behind your ear, also can be used for determining the sex of a person, though the accuracy is only about 80%. Now, that is the mastoid process of the skull, and this is the skull of a male, because it is a larger mastoid process. Unfortunately, I couldn't get hold of a female mastoid process. That is a very smaller surface area and thin and narrow. Another mastoid process, again that of a man. So, that is a mastoid process for sex determination, which gives only 80% accuracy. So, in this case, with the available bones, sex could not be determined. Regarding skull wall sutures, the fontanelles are the first to use in infants, fuse in infants. In the adult, fusion of the sagittal suture, that is this suture, commences at about 27 to 30 years around this area, that is called the obelion. In this case, absence of commencement of fusion meant that the disease would be less than 30 years old. Now, this is a sagittal suture which has partly fused. Same skull to show a better view, partly fused. Whereas, this is a skull where the sagittal suture is not fused. This is the suture, and you can see the suture lines, and what the skull bones that were brought was around this area, and we could see very clearly that the suture lines are open and not fused at all. Now, another very good indicator for age determination is part of the pelvic bone. This is the pubic symphysis, where two pelvic bones come together. Now, this can point towards the age with about 2 to 3 years accuracy. Unfortunately, all these bones were burnt in her case. So, the most we could say was that the person would have been less than 30 years, because the sutures were not fused. And this is a 23-year-old person's pubic symphysis, and this is a 61-year-old person's pubic symphysis. You will note the nice ridges and grooves in this, whereas in this the surface has broken down. So, this is scientific forensic evidence for determination of the age. Now, let me go to another significant bony criteria for age determination, that is at the base of the skull, where this is the suture which is called the spheno-occipital suture, which can give an age of about 20 years, because it fuses at 20 years of age. But in her case, those parts of the bone were totally burnt off. Now, let me get on to the review of this case to talk about the lessons that could be learned when we look back and analyze the progression of this case. Just to get back, this is a fused spheno-occipital suture which shows that the person is more than 20 years of age. So, let us look at the positives and the negatives in this case, because I think Dr. Grewal also will tell us that review of homicide investigation is a very present trend globally, and this became popular in the UK in the aftermath of many miscarriages of justice, and there have been a lot of recommendations whereby police are asked to follow those procedures in order to have a better conviction rate. And those recommendations included training of senior detectives and personnel working in major incident rooms or charge rooms, the command of investigations, and it goes on and on. And the result of this review was the writing of the Murder Investigation Manual published in 1998. As a citizen of Sri Lanka, not as a doctor, I ask this question: is it timely for Sri Lanka to have such a panel of experts in the police who can review the successful as well as the failed cases in the past and learn from them? So, may I go on to the lessons learned from this murder investigation and trial, creating awareness in the public on steps to be taken in the detection of a major crime, and the need for providing protection to victims and witnesses of crime, because one witness's house was burnt because he reported to the police. When the offender is a police officer or a person who can influence the local police, delegate investigation to an unbiased investigator, as happened in this case. Proper management of the charge room information by the prosecution as well as the senior police officers. And when there is a mysterious crime, it would be wiser to obtain advice and direction from the prosecutors early in the case, which sometimes happens in our country, so that they may be able to show different line of investigation to obtain a breakthrough in the cases and encourage scientific research related to forensic evidence in such cases. And may I conclude by saying that in spite of being an officer in charge of the police station, the accused was convicted of a major crime due to the efforts and integrity of the law enforcement agency, the prosecution, scientific evidence, and law-abiding citizens of the country. When such influential perpetrators of crime are punished, it speaks volumes regarding the human rights situation of a country. And in salute to the police officers who have dedicated their lives to the solving of crime and maintaining peace and harmony in the country, I tell these two lines: in the hands of a policeman I died, justice denied, but in the hands of a policeman I rejoiced, justice prevailed. Thank you.